Sorry for my Portuguese, but it will be the only one thing that is saying Portuguese so far. And first of all, I would like to thank you for coming and present a little bit what we were doing here. I'm Denis, Maksimov, and there is an artist, Timo, Tuominen. We are together founded in 2015 Avenir Institute, which is the think tank. Actually, it's not an art collective per se, but we use arts as one of the platforms for staging transdisciplinary researches, and one of them is presented in this little exhibition here. And the lecture performance that I'm going to do right after this moment is going to last just for 10-12 minutes, and it's called the Epistemology of Order, or the Imperialism post-ante. And so once again, welcome and thank you, and it will not be that long. So first of all, in order to understand the context of the Avenir Institute, I would remind you one Greek myth, which you, for sure, some of you remember. The myth of Perseus, and Perseus cutting the head of Gorgona, the Medusa Gorgona. There is a very particular moment in that myth when Perseus, according to one of the interpretations of the historians, is receiving the aegis, the shield of Athena, and there is a very glimpse of the intuition, and when he needs to make a decision how he's supposed to use this shield in order to defeat Gorgona. And in that moment, he picks up the shield and uses it as the mirror in order to see the Medusa and cut her head. So that particular moment when Perseus decides how to functionally use that shield is in Greek, ancient Greek language, has a very particular name. This name is kairos. It's a supreme moment of opportunity that is grasped in a very, very short time, with a very, very short entrances of the functional assessment, so any sort of analysis. It's a pure place of superposition of intuition at the same time and the analysis. So Avenir Institute deals with Avenirs that are resembling themselves in part also in what is called kairos in Greek mythology and in Greek language as well. But there is another word as well that Greeks are very often using, before, and this word is thanatos. And thanatos means death, the moment of the complete destruction, and that death means the death not only physical but also death emotional, and it's the darkest place you can ever enter. So Avenir contains that too. Avenir in itself is very neutral. It's just an opportunity that is presented in front of you, and whatever you will do with this shield, like Perseus in that particular moment, he could also just took it and cook on it basically eggs or something like that, waiting for Gorgona. But instead of it, he used it in a very particular way. So Avenir in this way is an action-based term. But again, coming back to the lecture and to the topic of today, Thomas Hobbes, as maybe some of you know in here, the political theorist from 16th century, introduced the concept of Leviathan. And the concept of Leviathan deals with a corporeal representation of a nation, of a sovereign, of someone who possesses the ultimate power and the power and the political oppression and power and political violence. As a sovereign, and this body is representing the bodily form of the consciousness of a particular nation, of particular states. And in a very famous book cover that was produced back then, you have a very big image of a man, which is composed and superpositioned with a lot of very little people. So this sovereign in any way is a representation, a corporeal body of the community or the society as we see. And departing from that particular moment, it's funny enough to look at it that we look at the nation state in the form of its political organization very much as we look very often at our own corporeal bodies as well. We look at the political institutions inside of the political systems as organs, as functioning organs. The parliament could be a heart, or the court system is becoming a brain, and so on and so on. But we really have the notion of the gravity that sort of rumbles around us and sucks us in order to understand how this political entity works as such. And we call it anthropological gravity, something that actually brings you to analyzing everything through very much body ourselves. But coming to the contemporary politics in this sense, Thomas Hobbes was writing the book 500 years ago. The world was very different. The world was not as interconnected as the world interconnected now. So at the moment we are speaking in here, with our Leviathan laying here, we are speaking about the corporeal body of the whole world. Because again, the organs in this way moved into the level up, and the nations, and as well as the societies, have to act as they are acting inside of one particular structure. And today, as you see this man laying here, a little bit like an anatomical theater in the Netherlands in the 16th century, I would like you to imagine dealing with disease in this man. And we decided to choose one particular disease for tonight to discuss in this corporeal body of the global politics. This disease is called frictional imperialism. And I will unpack what I mean by frictional imperialism further. So empires are varying in very different forms and ways. So the empires sometimes are formed by decision and by choice. And some of the empires are created completely out of the scratch, just by the paper and by the models of what was existing before, like Brazil in the 19th century. And those empires need to assume specific symbols and specific forms. They need to get an anthem, they need to get a flag, they need to get a history that they probably did not have before. And those empires are appearing empires. So they have a neo-imperial stage in them. And being neo-imperial empire, being new empire in that sense, does not mean that you convert that status into something else. But this is already a start. But neo-imperial stage lasts for a specific period and amount of time. And in some cases, this neo-imperial form of this particular nation or states can convert onto the next level of the imperial representation. And this would be something that could be called present empire. And the present empire, in this instance, is the only one place. There's only one place for it in politics. There's only one present empire that could exist at the same time in one, what Greeks were calling oikoumene, in one habitable world. You can have only one dictator of what is normal, what is meant to be ethical, what is meant to be good, and what is meant to be bad. Again, these present empires were known in history in the world for a really long time. Here I hold one particular present empire, which is the present at the moment, and it's the United States. And the present empire lives in a very specific moment of time and space, which actually not a time and space moment. It's the period which we call everlasting presence. The present empire, like Rome was in the period of its time as well, is trying to normalize its forms of ethics and its approach towards what is meant to be good, what is meant to be bad, and expands and dominates. Because the imperial language and what empire is striving for, what empire is trying to receive and obtain, is a political power. Political power that is ultimate to the essence of not following rules. Because if you have a lot of countries in the world, but you have very few empires in history, there are a lot of countries and a lot of states that are following the specific rule codes and that are getting punished if they're not following that specific rule code. But there are very few empires who can scrap the code and who can actually impose the code of behavior. And we know, for example, that some of the empires, such as the United States, we are all watching Hollywood movies and we're all going to approaching them actually, and they are taken into the context only as they are meant to be communicated. They are not meant to be interpreted. They are not meant to be somehow culturally appropriated. You cannot culturally appropriate the United States of today. You could have not probably culturally appropriate the Roman Empire during the period of its rise as well. And what is also very important about the present empire is that the present empire does not have image of future. There is no future in present empire because it's supposed to prolong that present where it dictates the norm as long as possible. That's why this present is everlasting. So by definition, the present empire is an enemy of the futures. The futures in any of their form realization, one-dimensional, multi-dimensional, are not supposed to happen. The now is the best thing that you could ever have, and you can only improve it by bit, but you cannot change it. However, there is a third stage of the imperial development. And in that third stage of imperial development, you can deal with something that is called transcendent empires. So here I'm holding a little Russia, for example, that is close to me also personally, by many reasons. And the Russia is a very particular example of a transcendent empire. The transcendent empires and what they mean in a sense of assessment. Transcendent empires are existing in specific psychological condition. They are actually per se not bad in a way. Because, for example, imagine Greece, the Greece of today. How much Greece of today has in common with an ancient Greece? Not much, maybe. But the transcendence of the Greek Empire and the Greek culture is much larger than the empire of the actual Greece, of the actual Republic of Greece that we know at the moment. But the best Greek departments, researchers of departments, are not considered to be nothings anymore. The museum pieces that are stunning the world are held in the British Museum. So basically Greece transcendented in this way into very many places. Russian ballet, for example, is staged better sometimes in Paris and in London and in New York, rather than it's happening in Bolshoi, for example. But again, some of the transcendent empires have a very specific condition, which I was referring to in the beginning, to which this lecture is devoted. It's a condition of frictional imperialism. And what's friction from the word fric, not from the word friction in this sense. And this frictional condition comes from the idea and it comes from the desire of the particular transcendent empire to return to the moment in the past, and to realize, return through this moment of returning to the past, to launch the new present, to enter the new present, or to claim the present that that empire lost back through some specific actions that this empire is supposed to impose. And empires do it in different ways. And funnily enough, many will not now recognize this, but it's anyway hard to recognize. And funnily enough, these empires are using sometimes very interesting geopolitical forms of activity for that. For example, they start proxy wars, or they initiate somehow a condition in which proxy wars become impossible. This is Ukraine. And funnily enough, before I started the lecture, the map of Ukraine fell, and just next to Sandra now is a little Crimea. It's very funny. Almost a fate. Apart of that, the proxy empires, apart from the proxy wars, there are many other ways for the transcendent empire to try to claim its presence back. Through, for example, manipulation of the neighbors, and manipulation and influencing the neighbors in order to claim your place in this game. This is Finland, if you don't recognize, might not recognize a lot of lakes in here. And strategies of those empires in approaching this position of launching the new presence is very often used, the countries like Finland are used in order to reach to much bigger fish for the empire. It was something that the transcendent empire is not able to compete with anymore. With some of the empires that are at the moment are possessing much more resources and energy. But you need to find a smart way to claim your place back. So Germany, for example, is rather more direct adversary in that sense of that particular transcendent empire than any one of the neighbors. And crippling specific geopolitical neighbor, who is represented by Germany and represented by the contemporary values of Germany, is becoming an effective strategy for the frictional empire to get its place back. Let's put the multicultural heart of Germany in here. And it's funny also, you probably already noticed that I talk about these countries as they are organisms, as they are beings in a way. And you also most probably noticed it in news. You always hear Germany said that, Germany thinks that. Whenever it's the official representing the position of the country obtains consciousness, it becomes conscious. So the countries today, in the contemporary media world, they are very sentient. They're actually beings in themselves, and we are being the part of these big leviathans, representing what they represent. So it's often, for example, to hear a sentence, for example, what China thinks, and what China is, what China is supposed to represent, what China would go for, what China would do, what is China for the world, what is China for the leviathan. And China itself also start to play this game, because you need to adverse the expectations in this sense, and might become something of the manufacturing hand of this big leviathan, in order to claim its specific position and its possibility to convert maybe into one of the stages and one of the forms of the empire. There are also, apart of that, places that are not located on the map yet, and not even looked at or overlooked at the moment. Places like South Africa, for example, where the possibility of activating the whole huge continent, which soon will become the most populous continent on the planet, is still unrealized. So therefore, the dark horses in the literal and aesthetic way of this form are also quite open to the reinterpretation inside of the Leviathan. And finally, I would like to say, to move to what I started from this intervention, to the notion of Avenir. Because looking at this whole picture, which is again the picture that more looking at the present rather than looking at the futures, and more looking at the specific snapshot of one subjective view on how we can look at the world. But what is the possibility in this world? What is the Avenir? What is that shield of ages that maybe is hanging in front of us, that maybe is about to be grasped and can be again used to make eggs on it, or rather to use it for some more interesting purpose. And we live now at the moment of 21st century, where something that we call institutional twilight becomes pretty much common thing to analyze and common thing to see. Look for yourself. Companies like Google, like Facebook, or Apple, already possess many more resources than many of those components of Leviathan that are engaged in there. Moreover, the complication of the legal system is already allowing them to coexist at the same time in very many different forms, in a shape that is not possible to be represented on this corporeal body. So maybe places like Greenland at that point might become the meeting point for them, or some points of the geographical intersections that do not have any importance into them might open up the new possibility for those actors of the institutional twilight. And twilight, as you know, is this beautiful moment when the horizon is meeting the sun, and you don't see neither the sun nor neither the horizon. You just see the wobbly picture of the heat coming out of the lens. So therefore, you could not really see even the temporality of this frontier. And in that particular twilight, probably the magic of Kairos can happen, where we can finally move out from that particular loop of the empires. And I think you already maybe realized that the disease that I'm talking today about is pretty much looping. And it's disease that tend to convert the neo-becoming empire, neo-imperial state, becoming present state, and then present empire, and then becoming transcendent empire, and then wanting to return through frictional symptom back to the position of neo-empire, or claiming the new vision of itself. Could be the new places provides the possibility for that, or on the other hand, as we know in the case of Germany that lays in there, we empires tend to repeat their own circles. Germany itself repeated the circle of becoming new empire and becoming the present empire, and then collapsing into the total friction as minimum twice. And some historians will actually argue that even more, but we perfectly know 2 times, the First World War and the Second World War. So the question in the current empire and in the current placeholder of the present empire, how this empire would react on the current particular moment when it's getting to the curve of leaving the position of present empire and entering the empire, the condition of being transcendent. And the hope that we provide in Kairos is the hope on those institutional quiet kairoses that can provide the possibility to open up the answer beyond the question that is asked. Or we will face another Thanatos, which is in Greek mythology, the counterbalance of Kairos, where the Kairos is providing the beautiful opportunity and the possibility of intuitively catch the opportunity that is not graspable. And Thanatos provides the imminent amount of death, complete destruction, and the negation to both initiator of Thanatos and to everyone who is involved. It's the total Pandora box. Thank you.